Welcome, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. It's the 26th of October. There's several things I want to cover today. But the first thing I'm going to cover is something that needs to be covered because there's a very big misunderstanding or dissonance that doesn't ever get covered. But primarily because the majority of the people that are doing these commentary in the West. No, I'm not talking about the ones that are the trolls and cheerleaders for World War III from the West, or the kowtowers and Sophia fonts of Western leaders. But even those answering for Russia, a lot of what's missing is the actual Russian mentality. I listened, for example, recently, today, about an hour ago, to a recording from that Glenn Deason, who never has yet to invite me. I think I've actually written to him, but oh well, it's his choice. And Professor Doctorow. Doctorow is Danish, if I do believe I am correct. I may be wrong, of course. Deason is Norwegian. They're discussing from the Russian side. Doctorow, for his own admission, has a lot of liberal friends, so he's got a lot of information from the liberal side. He also doesn't, but it's gotten less so as time has gone on. I'll give him that much. But his mentality remains absolutely Western. For example, the window of opportunity for Russia to strike and destroy everybody. He talks about it, and why Russia doesn't strike Ukraine fully and exterminate it, basically, and maybe do the same thing to a lot of Europe. And this a lot of comes from even people that know Russians, but are not Russians. I'm not saying Westerners cannot become Russian. Oh yeah, I can Russify quite a bit, maybe even fully. I have several friends who have basically Russified. We have that tendency on people when they immigrate to Russia or spend too much time around us. we literally grow on them in their mind. It just, but the misunderstanding, and part of it is the very, very cultural misunderstanding. Sorry, I thought I had something there. That Westerners just don't understand. And in this case, I'm going to be referring to the escalation ladder. We have the typical escalation ladder of the West, step for step, tig for tack, and so on and so on. And they can't understand the Russian escalation ladder. The Russian escalation ladder doesn't work like the West for a reason. And it never worked. If you actually look at history, it doesn't work the same way. And that goes back to our Orthodox faith and our Orthodox culture. Even those who are not practicing Orthodox have grown up in Orthodox culture. And yes, even the Soviet culture was still underlying on a foundation of Orthodox culture. After the 20s, the radical 20s, you're talking about during the Civil War, Revolution, Civil War, the various purges in the 20s. Even though the mid-20s, they actually relaxed it, but they were extremely liberalized until Russia was the first to legalize abortions, pedophiles running around, gay marriages, everything was legalized. Because for the Bolsheviks, the number one thing was to recruit people. And you recruit the marginals first, because they're the easiest to recruit if you support whatever their psychosis happens to be. Well, by 1928, with the Bolsheviks in power, the Russian, Soviet Union now, but the majority of the former Russian Empire, demographics were a catastrophe, an absolute catastrophe. The country was dying. Right before their eyes, the country was dying. And that's when they made a 180-degree turn. Not the bareback 360, not the bareback 360. Some people will get that reference. But a full 180. It became family, family, family. It became extremely conservative. And it became very much, and it continued to be getting even more so very much under Stalin, like an Orthodox society minus God. Stalin, let's not forget, was in seminary. To be a priest when he left seminary, became a revolutionary. So Orthodox ceremony, Orthodox liturgy, tradition is what he understood and what he grew up in and what he was bathed in. And in 1941, in Sergei Posad. Sergei Posad is the patriarchal monastery palace, if you want to call it that, but it's really a set of churches and monasteries in for the patriarch, out about 80 kilometers from modern day Moscow. Back in those days, it was over 100 kilometers. Moscow's grown quite a bit. But the last the last church in that monastery was set for demolition, I think the day after the Germans had actually started the war. I mean, it obviously had been pre-scheduled. And Stalin took that as a very bad sign. And Stalin changed quite a bit. Sergei Posad, after the war, was rebuilt. And was rebuilt by not December, I'm sorry, the, uh, the young communist movements with government funding, quite literally. They were encouraging young people to go there and work. Well, they worked obviously for free, and they rebuilt the monasteries and the churches. Stalin gave out 17 Hero of the Soviet Union awards, the civilian one, to 17 priests in St. Petersburg or Leningrad. They kept their churches open and running because they kept the morale of the people up. In fact, Stalin wanted to have another communal council. By 42, there was a patriarch. He wanted to have an ecumenical council in the Soviet Union. The Greek churches, however, were already fully under the CIA, and they refused to attend. So you'd only have about half the Orthodox churches. So it was called off. Stalin wanted to make the Soviet Union the heart of world orthodoxy. Granted, with a strong socialist tinge, obviously, but yes. And there was no repression of the church, active repression of the church, until Khrushchev came into power. Now, the repression of the church after that became slightly different. It was no longer gulags or executions the way it was in the 20s and in the 30s, early 30s, anyways. But it was more of a propaganda, informational, and pressure campaigns. Well, one of the points that was brought up for Khrushchev's removal from power, this time, he was voted down by the Politburo. But interestingly enough, one of his failures, or one of his crimes against the Soviet state, was persecution of the church. That's actually one of the points that Khrushchev had hanging over his head. So yes, the Soviet Union became a very conservative, ethically, culturally, a very, very conservative state. It may much more conservative than many of the American conservatives could even imagine. So, because of that, where am I going with all this? To the Orthodox Christians, war is always a sin. St. Augustine's just war is not accepted. St. Augustine is a mutual saint of both the Orthodox and the Catholics. Not that the Protestants especially accept saints foolishly, but they do seem to accept a lot of their writings. But St. Augustine's treatises on just war are not canonical for the Orthodox Church. They became canonical for the Catholics after the Orthodox Catholic split in 1054. St. Augustine's treatises on just war were not accepted by the Church, and still aren't. War is a sin. Killing others is a sin. The difference is sometimes it's a sin that has to be carried out because the sin that will follow, the evil that will follow by not going to war is much worse than the evil of war. Unlike the West and their righteous war doctrines. Yes, that wasn't that wasn't a mistaken slip. We don't have that. Soldiers that spill blood in war go into fasting and prayer to be expunged of the sin of spilling human blood. What does that actually mean? How does that actually translate? It means that to the last minute, we are constantly trying to seek for peace without war. It doesn't mean we won't go to war. And that's what the West never has been able to understand. But we will seek to go to peace as much as possible before we have to go to war. which is why Russia delayed, even when it was ready for war. In this case, it delayed, trying to talk some sense into the West until it was obvious it couldn't. Then it struck enough to, well, what it thought would be enough. Obviously, in the Kremlin, they never quite understood just how much the West wanted to murder us. And still, the Western leadership wants to murder us. Nothing has changed. Even if a lot of the faces have changed, their policies haven't changed in one iota. But that's the difference. The West incrementally escalates. Russia doesn't respond. The West feels emboldened. It incrementally escalates again. Russia's response is verbal, moral, to a degree. And then when that degree is passed, when it is obvious that any treatise toward morality or faith or anything that looks like rationale has passed, Russia strikes. Russia strikes overwhelmingly at that moment, and then the escalation starts again. While the West constantly escalates, you should think of Russian escalation as a spring that's getting pushed down by constant Western escalations, many escalations, many escalations, many escalations, many escalations. That energy in that spring that's been pushed down builds, and you get one big strong hit. And then the West recoils and screams, oh, you're warmongering psychopaths. Why did you do this? Why did you drop an Oreshnik on us? Or why did you kill a bunch of our staff? They're just instructors. Or some other crap like that. And then they start doing their incremental, until they get struck again. Russia, that spring is down about this low right now. There's a lot of force, a lot of energy, and a lot of anger built up. You see, the reason Russians fight as hard as they do is because it's a righteous fight. At least that is how it is seen by the majority of those who are fighting. Some of you may think it's a self-righteous fight. Well, for us, it's not a self-righteous fight. It's a righteous fight. We've tried everything else. We've tried over and over to talk morality, to treaty on peace, for some idea of Christian values, and all of this else, and it's all been spat upon. And in these incremental escalations of the West, it's always accompanied with betrayal, lies, and that just builds the anger. That is part of the pressure, that spring. What the West doesn't understand is when that spring bursts this time, there will be, again, rivers of blood. More likely, there will be a declaration of war on Ukraine at a minimum. And more likely, there will be strikes on whatever factories are manufacturing missiles, on whatever strategic assets around that area. And, I wouldn't stick around in any of the major cities, particularly in Western major cities in Ukraine, because I just wouldn't. That's my advice. More likely, the long-range strikes from the West are going to come within the next 2 weeks. And the reason I believe this is because you have two major pockets that are already formed. They're tactically closed. They're not fully encircled. You have one up in Kupiansk in the north. Russian forces have already reached the edges of Krasnolimon. There's fighting there. And the Kupiansk direction, there's about 5,000 Ukrainians surrounded. There's a corridor for them to escape, but the corridor is absolutely under direct fire control from two sides by Russia. There's a water obstacle further down, a major water obstacle. Equipment is not going to get out. Maybe in small groups of men will get out. They will carry huge casualties. Second pocket is actually a dual pocket, with the eastern pocket being between Mirograd and eastern Pokrovsk. A lot of those are already running for their lives, dropping whatever equipment they have, trying to get into northern Pokrovsk, which is also closed. There's a 4-kilometer wide gap corridor that's fire swept, drone swept, aviation controlled, indirect artillery controlled. And there's about 10,500 men in that pocket. True, these aren't the cauldrons of Stalingrad, but these aren't the same level of incursions and encirclements of Stalingrad. But nonetheless, losing 15 to 20,000 more men for the Ukrainian regime, well, they're not going to get embarrassed. These people that play the piano with their wanker, aren't going to get embarrassed about anything. they will get a lot more desperate. What will happen, though, as the West will continue to try to deny it even after those pockets are closed, and we learned that it turns out that Pokrovsk or Krasnoarmeysk and Kupiansk really weren't important at all, just like every Ukrainian city that's lost was never really important. That's why they would throw away 100,000 men, 80, 100,000 men on it, throw them to their death because it just wasn't really important. That's the standard answer. But what will happen is that entire northeast of Kharkov Oblast is gone. There's not enough men left to defend it. Additionally, you will instantly get a super pocket in the Slaviansk, Kramatorsk, Konstantinovka area. Because as Kupiansk collapses, as the Russian forces are already on the edge of Krasnolimon, those additional forces will surge forward, and Krasnolimon will fall very quickly, which places Russian forces directly northwest of Slaviansk and above them, an elevation. So artillery can fire down, have sweeping fire lanes on target in Slaviansk. Meanwhile, there's already fighting inside the eastern edges and possibly already the southern edges, Konstantinovka, and the encirclement is coming from the south. The line's broken. From here to eastern Dnipropetrovsk, which is on the left bank or the east bank of the Dnieper, because the right bank, left bank, it's opposite of what you're thinking when you're looking at a map. Because you got to remember, the primary routes as people are making these maps are going north to south. So if you imagine yourself going south down the river Dnieper, there's the right bank, which happens to be the west, and there's the left bank, which happens to be the east. Now, if you're looking at a map, it would seem to be the other direction, because north is here, south is here. It's backwards because of the people that were mapping this and the concept of how it was made. Because they're looking at it, they were in the north heading south toward Tsargrad or Constantinople. So that's how it was set up. By the way, almost daily strikes on civilian targets. You get 2, 3 Ukrainian civilians maybe dead because hardly any proof is ever shown. They just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time after major strikes of hundreds of drones and dozens of ballistic missiles going in every night. Counter that with every single day between 3 to 10 to 15 civilians are killed in former Eastern Ukraine, the Russian new old territories. They're all old territories of Russia, Novorossiya, or other parts of Russia, murdered by the West. And that's also part of, and it is murdered by the West. By the way, as I've said so many times, those HIMARS are fully American systems with Americans behind the wheel. Delivering, launching, guiding, hitting civilian targets. That's all American military. And that's part of that pressure on that spring. Just yesterday, you had around 4 civilians killed in Donetsk, on the western edges of Donetsk, which are still within range of Grad systems, which are fire about Grad's a fire, I think about 18, 20 kilometers, if I remember correctly. So they're still within the edges of the city. Today, Yasanovata, where my aunt lives, I've been to Yasanovata, I've listened to artillery firing overhead, have been hit by 155 millimeter rounds. 3 civilians killed, including a woman and her young teenage daughter. Every single day. Every single day. The anger and the hatred is boiling, and that spring, the power that's loaded behind that spring is insane. So when these 2 pockets collapse, the West will go into panic mode, because from Petrovsk to eastern Dnipropetrovsk is about 40 kilometers, and there's almost nothing there. It's a rush. Once you get rid of once you've surrounded Konstantinovka, Kramatorsk, Slaviansk pocket, you've taken out any threats to your flanks. They can't retreat their troops from the northeast. because they've been crushed. Whatever's left is going to be skittering further and further west toward Kharkov, across the water barriers they can barely get across because a lot of those bridges have been destroyed. Finally, been destroyed. And there's a three-prong offensive. Part of that coming from Konstantinovka, part of it is from the other two positions in Kharkov Oblast that are looking to cut off all of northeastern Kharkov and create one solid front as it moves toward Kharkov itself. And knocking out all the power, the gas, the water to Kharkov is the great way to get the civilians out of the way for the city to be taken. So that's something to consider. The West really, really does not understand the escalation concept in Russia and at what point it is right now. Deep strikes by serious cruise missiles that the U.S. will probably give. At this point, I think they actually will. Is going to escalate a lot. And hopefully, at this point, it's not just going to be in Ukraine. It shouldn't just be Ukrainians, Ukrainian military dying for what America or for what England does. Payback should be to those that are actually sponsoring, planning, and executing this. And that's the thing that it amazes me. These people are on the march to Venezuela, Colombia, and I guess Panama. They'll just go ahead and go for all three. Panama, it used to be part of Colombia until the U.S. invaded it, annexed it, and created a separate state so they could build a canal for cheap. And shelled the Colombian army, too, with American battleships and cruisers that happened to be down there at that point, just accidentally. America couldn't handle Afghanistan, and Afghanistan was not proxied. Come on down to Venezuela and Colombia. It's going to get proxied from every direction by Russia, by China, by Brazil, by Iran. Who knows how many other countries will proxy that little war to drain out and gut out Washington and the U.S. The U.S. military is not going to be capable of holding that on a 50, 100,000 deployment with an active combat zone going on at the level of Vietnam. Not now. Not when you're going to get rid of, if you just want to shape up the U.S. military to make it look like an actual military instead of a Weight Watchers club, you're going to have to get rid of 20%. Plus another 2-3% for transgenders that they got in there, and so on and so on. I mean, that's the reality of it. Axis is going to have to do that. He's already doing it. But who are you going to replace it with? Who wants to have a Vietnam experience? Just with a Spanish twang instead of Vietnamese. And the slant of the eyes of the people there is different. Other than that, yeah, I think actually Venezuela has much more infectious species that would be more than happy to kill you than Vietnam ever did. So that's something to consider. That's something to consider. Now we're going to go on to some other subjects. How far has Germany fallen? Now, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and admit I was slightly incorrect about these new sanctions. In the U.S., I was absolutely correct because there's really no daughter branches or no entities from Rosneft and Lukoil in the U.S. But the portion that I missed, I can admit when I'm wrong. The portion that I missed is that there's going to be secondary banking sanctions. Now, the U.S. ran ahead of the ahead of the train. U.S. just makes up crap. I mean, let's talk reality. The U.S. just makes crap up. How do you know most American politicians? I won't say all of them, but most American politicians are lying. They're breathing. I mean, that's down to what you get. I mean, for God's sakes, Trump is now campaigning for Lindsey Graham. There's America first for you. America first to die, pay, and be a dirty rag to be used by countries like Israel, by the warmongers, by the international finance. Look, the war in this world is first and foremost between the bankers, the international finance. I'm not talking a little bank owner in some little town or village. I'm talking about the big financiers and the rest of humanity. This isn't a this isn't a power struggle between monarchists, communists, um, libertarians, or whatever else titles you want to use from the old dialectic. The dialectic's changed. Now, the West is making sure you don't think the dialectic has changed. It's all about the communists or the Nazis or the Republicans and liberal democracy or some crap like that, which is all just crap like that. The real dialectic now, and has been for quite a while, probably at least 2 decades, if not three. I'll probably say 3 decades, maybe even more on a quieter basis. If we go from Operation Gladio, then since 1948 for Europe, uh, Operation Condor in the 60s in Latin America, Operation Troy. Yeah, the CIA is full of them. This is a war between globalists and localists. You can call the localists patriots, you can call them nationalists, you can call them whatever you want to call them. But it's between people that think that their nation, their clan, their tribe, their culture, their society is worth preserving, worth growing, worth enriching. And those that think that you should be biomaterial for their neo-feudalistic entity enterprise, where they will walk above you like gods, and those of you that survive will kneel and sacrifice your children to their wants and desires. That is the reality. That is the fight. That is the global fight right now. And these globalists, they're not people of God. Oh, they have a God that they worship, whether directly or just through their actions. But it's not the God, the Creator. It's not the Son of God, God the Word, Jesus Christ. That's for sure as hell not that. That's their anti-God. That's the one they hate. And they will sacrifice anybody to get their ends. And it's amazing to watch. England is first and foremost, my God, you Anglos are spineless. I'm sorry, but you really, really are. Have you not figured out that your little demonstrations in your open air gulag don't get you anywhere? The government doesn't give a damn. Have they changed any policies? No, they've doubled down, tripled down. They arrest you for 30, 35 people a day get arrested for thought crime in the UK. 1984 was about you. Animal Farm was really more about you, even though it was written in the context of the Soviet Union and the Red Revolution. It was really toward you. Brave New World, huh? You wish you had a Brave New World. No, you're fooling 1984. You skipped the good life of the Brand New World part. This is a Brand New World trying to make Brave New World try to make a good world, even if it was based on work, consumption, and drugs. But it's one that people kind of at least are comfortable in. No, you don't even get that. You're just going straight into the worst of the depth of 1984, and much, much worse than that. Because even Orwell couldn't comprehend or couldn't come up with the replacement, the Great Replacement. But I mean, you've got armed bands. I'm talking. What the last parade was like about 100 plus people. Islamic jihadists walking down London with bats and machetes, and the police staying away and control and keeping it all safe. No arrests as they scream, "This is our country. This is our land. We've taken it over." And you, who are still the vast majority, do nothing but whine on the internet, come out on X, show the videos, oh boo hoo hoo, oh how horrible this is. Seriously, you don't deserve to have a homeland. You don't deserve to have a culture. You already don't have a faith. You don't deserve anything. You know why? Because you're spineless. Those who will not fight for the very basics of their own homeland, you're not talking you're sitting in somebody else's homeland. They're sitting in your homeland. The fact that you won't even defend the future of your own children, this is past pathetic. This is past pathetic. Have some more marches, have some more demonstrations. Watch another 30, 40 people get arrested every single day. By the way, when they run out of room to house all of you, that's when the executions start. You've been warned. And Ireland, you're on the same path. The police protect the people that are raping the 10-year-old children. They don't protect the 10-year-old children. Welcome to reality. You either fight for your country, you fight for your culture, you fight for the future of your children, or just shut the hell up and stop whining and accept what you're getting. Now, further, we go to Germany. How far has Germany fallen? How far has Europe fallen? The morons that run Europe is just amazing. It really is. It's just amazing. First of all, the Sophia-Fonts of America is beyond doubt. So Trump's new little order, sanctions. First of all, let's get down to why all of this failed. Okay, Trump is in Russian. There's a saying, "7 пятниц на неделю." 5 Fridays to a week. In other words, somebody changes their mind all the time. With Trump, it's not 7 Fridays to a week. It's not 7 Fridays. It's like 57 Fridays to a week. The man changes his mind sometimes 3, 4, 5 times a day. He's like a teenage girl. I think it's more dementia than hormonal imbalance that a teenage girl goes through. Maybe it's hormonal imbalance and dementia in this case. But look, cocaine Rubio or narco Rubio, whatever you want to call him. The man sabotaged the meeting. I mean, that's obvious enough. He met with Lavrov. He ended that meeting, and they went straight into sanction mode. He's got Trump by the gonads, leading him around. Well, he takes turns along with everyone else to lead Trump around that they want them. Though I think Trump doesn't mind being led around. He needs to look like the big boss. All they do have to do is kiss his ass, and he'll let them lead him around. And by the way, that means lead you around. So this new law closes down 3 confiscated but operational oil refineries in Germany. Rosneft oil refineries from a daughter of Rosneft, which is owned by, which was operating in Germany, which the Germans grabbed, but it's still Rosneft property. And this basically closes those 3 refineries down. But then again, why do the Germans need petrol? You're not having any new cars either. Why are you not having any new cars? If you haven't heard about Nextia yet, yeah, you want to talk about suicidally self-stupid? I mean, just on this alone, the EU and its sovereign governments deserve to be introduced to Mr. Guillotine. So they grabbed the Chinese chip manufacturer in the EU next year. They confiscated. Oh, now they're saying, but it's because the CEO was bad, not because we're against China. Now that they've realized that's how far and deep they've stepped in. Because China says, fine, you've got the factory. We're not sending you anything to make those chips with. That's it. You're cut off. Don't worry about rare earth magnets. You're not making any chips at all. And the first and main hit is the German automotive industry. But not just the German automotive industry. It's everybody in Europe. Just so happens that the German automotive industry, what's left of it, is still the biggest industry sector in Germany and the biggest automotive sector in all of the EU. So bye-bye. But Skoda is going to be hit just as hard. Everybody else is going to be hit just as hard. Nobody's escaping this. Renault's not escaping this. Passat is not escaping this. Nobody's escaping this. No more chips. No more automobile chips. Go ahead and set up your own factories to make chips. Oh, but the problem when you make up, first of all, getting those rare earth magnets, you need industries of scale. 3 of them come from massive aluminum manufacturing. Russia does it. Still not a scale of China. China just has a bigger aluminum manufacturing. That's about 4 times or 3 times larger than Russia's. Europe has almost no aluminum manufacturing, worth anything to note. And you need that to get the purified red mud to get 3 of the 17 rare earth elements. And a lot of the others require the same thing. They get separated out of the ore along with other trace materials when you're manufacturing other things. That's how things work. So, what's Europe going to do? By the way, if you want to make a chip manufacturer, just to understand, setting up a factory and bringing, build a factory, bring in the equipment, that can be done pretty fast. Half a year, get the wiring in and all that. And it takes between 3 to 5 years to get a clean room. That's your manufacturing. That's your manufacturing territory. That means it's sealed off, air circulating, and filters are picking up dust because you cannot have dust. If you've never been to it, and I've had suppliers who are chip manufacturers. You walk in there in a white robe, mask on, hair covered. You get vacuumed before you go in there. I guess I can't get all the skin cells not to fall off of you, but that's acceptable minimum. But yeah, it is a clean room because when that welding's done, yeah, they can't have anything on there. Otherwise, it spoils the broth. That's how it's done. So yeah, go ahead. I mean, you can set it up. You can get the equipment fast. You're just not going to be manufactured for at least 3 years. That's a long-term investment. Can the German auto industry survive making modern cars for 3 years, waiting to set up 5 years, waiting for chips? Of course not. I mean, they can go back to cars from the 1980s, 1970s. Maybe Germans will have to go back to that. Hell, you may have to go back to having steam-powered engines in your cars again. Lucky you. I mean, just give up all the electronics and you could go back to old cars. Of course, the Germans destroyed most of those old cars. Just like it was fun watching them taking down atomic power plant cooling towers. Oh, yeah, they just took out a couple more. I think there's maybe the last ones in the entire country. I mean, you have to be a right high level of advanced, super advanced level of stupid and moronic to allow that to happen. But the Germans did, and they do. I mean, where was the demonstrations? Where were the peasants or the serfs? I don't know what you are anymore. How they're defending, cheap electricity and safety for your future and your children's future? Nobody. You're all sitting on your arses, moaning into X or on Facebook or whatever other service you never designed because you're incapable of designing it. By the way, Russia has a copy, well, I won't say a copy, its own version of every one of these services and more. China does too. And Yandex, by the way, search engine was ahead of Google's search engines, if we're going to go down those routes. Does Germany? Does England? Does France? Does the entire EU? No, you don't. You work off of other people's platforms. You beat yourself in the chest that you're so high and mighty, so advanced, when really, you've sunk so far, fallen so far behind. It's not even funny. But yeah, but it gets better. It gets better. So Germany is my number one issue in this portion. Before I forgot to add one thing. Pokrovsk Mirograd, that pocket, has been given, and the Kupinsk pocket, have been given 48 hours to surrender. They don't surrender, they'll be exterminated. So if any of you have relatives or friends that may be in that pocket, start urging them, calling them to surrender, if you ever want to see them alive. Because those areas are going to get wiped. Now that I've said that. So the rest of this is all on Clown World Germany. We're not going to talk about the open air gulag. I've already talked about it, actually. The open air gulag that is England and is quickly becoming Ireland. We'll go straight to Germany. I mean, Germany has taken hit after hit after hit in the last week. Trump has just basically said no more petrol for you. Oops. And then Waterful, foreign minister of Germany, didn't go to China. Oh, and neither did Merz. Why? Because the Chinese said, We don't have time to waste on people like you. If we want to talk to those that own Germany, we'll talk to the Israelis or to the Americans or to the bankers in London City, because you don't own Germany. You're nothing but a puppet. But Germany's going to get revenge, and the EU's now going to get revenge against China. Like, EU doesn't have anything that can even reach China if we're talking about missile technology, but China has gotten to the point, getting to a point where it can reach out and probably touch the EU if it actually wanted to. But why bother with the sick and the infirm lepers on a subcontinent of Eurasia? They can't do anything to China. They can commit economic suicide, and they are, by command of their owners in America, who will probably take in your leadership, by the way, Europeans. We'll take your leadership and give them asylum. They'll live it up next door to Zelensky, partying and remembering the good old times as you starve and freeze. Think about that. But I really liked the comment from the Minister of the Interior, Alexander Dobrindt, for Germany, who said, I'm not quoting, I'm paraphrasing, but guilty before innocent. If we have a question about any of your assets, we'll assume you're a thief, and you have to prove that you're not a thief. Prove to us beyond a doubt that you're not a thief, or we just confiscate what you have. This, of course, goes hand in hand with the fact that Merz has already said that all the Russian Germans are a threat to Germany. Those are Germans that moved, ethnic Germans that moved from Russia or Soviet Union to Germany. Predominantly, there's a lot of small and medium businessmen. There's a huge amount of stored wealth within their businesses. And just to understand how big of a population this is, we're talking about 8 million people. Not only second class, they're now enemies of the state, as has been declared. Of course, they're going to use this law also to go after anybody in the Alternative for Deutschland party, because this is something that you can use to strip them of any assets, homes, computers, cars, their children. Because if they're criminals, we can take your children. This is Germany we're talking about. They're totally rewriting the concept. You're now guilty, all of you, the entire population of Germany, whether they're smart enough to understand or too stupid to understand it until they get come for, are now guilty. Guilty until you can somehow try to prove yourself innocent. You see, neoliberalism, or liberalism in general, is a disease. It's a mental disease. Once liberals come to power, they will never leave power. They will never leave power. We will talk in the next episode about neoliberalism and liberalism in general and what it's brought. Now, there's classical liberalism, but that's been subsided by the neoliberals. Some call it the anti-liberals. But I think this is just a direct outgrowth, really, of liberalism, especially the more extreme forms of liberalism. Cultural, mental liberalism. And we will discuss in the various countries where it is the predominant force what it's come to mean. And by the way, there's a bunch of maybe on purpose trolls or people repeating stupid things about Russia being the number one in alcoholism, in abortion, and so on and so on. And a lot of this was true back in the 90s. Update your stereotypes, folks. Russia was 26th most drinking country in 2022. It's the 29th most drinking country in 2025, with 10.4 liters of alcohol. That's distilled alcohol. I mean, that could be beer, it could be vodka, it could be wine, whatever. Whatever has alcohol. If you distill just the alcohol out, so you're looking at average consumption of 10.4 liters per person. U.S. is 9.6. Not that big of a difference. Just to consider, almost all of the EU is up ahead of Russia. Abortion rates, Russia has dropped, I think, somewhere around 26th, 25th in the world. From being on first, I mean, under Soviet Union and such, where abortion was quite literally your go-to contraception. Russia is, and it's collapsing. In fact, one of the things Russia has now done is counseling before abortions. And the mother has to listen to the heartbeat of her child in her. That's right. And it's amazing how many people go, no, no, thank you. Russia's now starting to move in to do the same thing on to lower divorce rates. It's forcing counseling. It's making divorce hard. So people think about it: is it worth saving the marriage, or are we just pissed off at each other? And now ego starts going in, and I can't feel like I can't back out. So that and the quickie divorce. I mean, this is something in the 1960s that the U.S. brought in also with the idea of, well, people just get divorced and remarry, divorce and remarry until they find the perfect person they're going to live with. Yeah, right. Lots of broken families. Oh yeah, absolutely, because the quickie divorce part works. Because you can get you can marry quick when the passions are high, and you can just divorce later without consequence, like sex without consequences. Abortion. It all has consequences, unavoidable consequences. It all has mental baggage. Much worse mental baggage going through a divorce than saving a marriage. Not always, of course. Some marriages are so abusive or just so acidic that there's nothing saving them. But the majority of marriages can be saved. Just like the majority of children should not be aborted. In fact, no children should be aborted. I mean, I can understand a woman that's been raped. Her mentality, though, it's still a child's life that you're taking. And it's not your body. Sorry, lady. It's your womb, but it ain't your body. The body you're aborting is a unique genetic code made up of half of your chromosomes and half of the father's, or the biological father's chromosomes, all mixed up. 1 in 32 children, every 32nd child, that statistically would be an identical child to a previous child. 1 in 32 chance of getting the same batch of chromosomes. But that's a separate genetic entity. Never mind the soul. I'm not even going down on that to talk about the soul. I'm just talking about genetics. That's not just a clump of cells. That's a human being. Whether it's a small clump of cells or it's a fully grown human being, it's still a human being with his own unique genetic blueprint. Not the mothers, not the fathers. Combined from the mothers and the fathers, but a separate genetic entity. So it's not just her body. Just like going into a hotel room and executing the people living in that hotel room and saying, hey, it's my property, my hotel, and everything in it is mine. I can do with it as I like. No, you can't. Think about that. Yeah, I've got the asbestos underwear on. I'm sure I'll get some flames. I don't care. Because this is what I actually believe absolutely. So if you don't like it, you don't have to listen to me. Nobody has to listen to me if they don't like it. They don't. No, I'm not forcing anybody to. But these are my views, and I'm not going to change it for anybody. Sorry. If I deem any views that are wrong as I grow as a person, I do change them or modify them. Uh, but not here. I mean, I've come to this point. Uh, so, anyways, we'll move on. We'll move on. So that's where we're at right now, folks. This is where we're at. And Trump is full steam ahead in Venezuela. There's a aircraft carrier group heading down there. Now, understand the Venezuelan army does have a ton of missiles. Russia has given them quite a few missiles, anti-aircraft, anti-ship missiles. So there will be a fight. But I highly doubt if any competent generals are in charge, and with the likelihood that at least part of the military will be in the coup faction behind Machado. That's how the U.S. normally runs. I highly doubt that the Venezuelan army is going to be doing suicide runs now to impale themselves on American bombs, missiles, artillery fire, and so on. I think the majority of them are, at least after some amount of resistance, are going to melt away into the cities, into the jungles, into the mountains, into the savannas, and into all the other swamp and all the other forms of biosphere in that giant country. Venezuela, for those of you who do not understand, and the ones that are looking at this flat map and thinking, everything's equally shaped. Venezuela is close to the equator, so it looks a lot smaller than those countries far from the equator. Russia is smaller than Africa. It's close to that size. Russia's the size of South America. But those countries are much bigger than they look in South America. Land-wise, Venezuela is the size of Germany and France put together, or two Texases, with like 20-something million people living there. I may be wrong. I mean, maybe more. I need to look it up. Maybe around 30 million. So, in that rugged terrain, how many Americans is it going to take to keep Machado from losing her life in her little stay of power? Because there's going to be a civil war going on. And I was also incorrect in one thing. I thought the majority of Venezuela's oil was offshore. Actually, I've been corrected. It's only about 20% of Venezuela's oil is offshore. The rest of it is inshore, onshore. So the U.S. has to go in there to go get that oil. It'll grab the platforms that are offshore, absolutely. The Marines will do that. Everything else goes deeper and deeper and deeper. So you're going to have to do that. Or you're going to have to trust Machado is going to be able to do it and ship that oil out to the ports. And then steps in the drones. The $2,000, $3,000 drones, FPV drones, that now have 15 kilometers, 20-kilometer range without retranslator drones. Those will be up too. You pop one of those big drones retranslating the signal, line of sight, baby, line of sight. And you put on a range of 30 to 40, sometimes some up to 60 kilometers. Any American ships offshore, they're possible targets. Platforms, oil platforms, targets. Onshore facilities, targets. And the only way you remove them as targets is you keep pushing the perimeter further and further back to make that range so they can't quite get close enough to target the targets. Milk the milk. Yeah. So, yeah, think about that. Think about it. Yeah, everything gets a lot more complicated, doesn't it? And that's modern warfare, baby. That's how it's run. Not that your politicians are going to answer that to you or tell you anything about it. No, they just want you to support, pay, bleed for their glory or the pocketbooks of their masters. Well, that's how it runs. That's how it runs. They're going to bring in an aircraft carrier group from the Mediterranean to help with the strikes on Venezuela. All full steam ahead. Full steam ahead to Vietnam 2.0, and if they put on Colombia, Vietnam 3.0. I mean, let's see how far we can get this. You think you're going to avoid the draft? You think the United States Army can actually occupy that territory? Oh, the Air Force can bomb it, of course, but that doesn't get you the resources. The Marine Corps can always, they can hold the line on the shore facilities, swallow what losses they'll be taking, but that's not going to get you the deep resources. And the majority of the rest of that will. So, hey, it's going to be fun. Mega first. And the bailout for Argentina looks like it's still steam ahead. Make Argentina great again at your expense. Only, what, $20, $30 billion. Ain't going to be coming for the ranchers and the farmers in the U.S. You're screwed. I mean, look, China's not just getting its agricultural products from Brazil. We are feeding China quite a bit. The last little road that Trump had with China, just to understand, China started mass importing from Russia wheat, rice. 2 huge industrial pork or pig farms got set up right on the border with China because logistics across the border, across a river like the Amur River, is a hell of a lot easier than logistics going from the other side of the Pacific. Never mind the territory you have to cross inside the U.S. to get to the Pacific ports. Soybean, Russia does grow soybean. Yes, it's a limited supply. It's not enough to feed China. But we do, and we've been selling them soybean. So yes, by all means, China is diversified in its food supply. We are one of their major food suppliers. We will continue to be that. We have no reason not to. It's called trade. Everybody benefits in this case. We'll continue to grow. Trump, well, that's Trump. Anyways. Okay. I will let you go. Please support if you can. Support comes in many forms, not just financial. If you do want to do financial, I've got my bit wallet number down in the description. I do have Patreon, though I haven't tried to take that money out of it. There's some money in there, so it'd be interesting to see if they'll block me or not. Buy Me a Coffee blocked me and took the money. Yeah, there was a lot in there, but like that, 15, $20, but they took it. So please sign up if you're not. Don't be a casual participant. Be an active participant. Comment, share, let people know. Tell other podcasts you want to see me on there, and hopefully I'll be on there. And I'll continue to bring you the good stuff. A matter of fact, today we shall be having a new interview coming out with Lucidia, who's a political professor, young political professor out of Italy. We'll be discussing Melania, the real Melania, not that stalwart of conservatism and all that other crap that she sells. The Melania that sold Italy down the road. All right. God bless. Cheers.